Welcome to Her Subconscious Blueprint, your no BS space for subconscious healing, bold breakthroughs, and manifestation, and becoming the version of you that is living her dream life. I'm your host, Jen Boyd, hypnotherapist, mindset coach, and your healing hype girl. I always say that you don't get what you want, but you get who you are. And in this episode, we're going to talk about who you have been taught to be when it comes to money, and how that identity may have been shaped in ways you didn't even choose. Today is part 2 of the money wounds, and we're going to go deeper than awareness. We're going to go into the emotional root, the lived experience, and the patterns that form when money was not just money, but something that carried meaning over power and sometimes pain. Because in part 1, we talked about what a money wound is. We talked about the beliefs, the subconscious programming, and how those early experiences shaped your financial reality. But today, I want to talk you into something that is often underneath those beliefs. Something that people don't always recognize, but it is incredibly powerful. We are talking about how money is used as control, how it is used as punishment, and how those experiences create wounds. They don't just impact your finances, but your sense of safety, your worth, your voice, and your ability to receive. And if you have ever felt like money feels heavy, like it comes with pressure, like it creates anxiety instead of ease, or like no matter how much you grow, there is still this underlying discomfort around money. I want you to stay with me through this entire episode because what we're going to unpack today might help you understand yourself on a level that you never have before. I want to start by bringing you into a moment, not intellectually, but emotionally. I want you to think back to your childhood, and I don't want you to think about numbers or budgets or what your parents made. I want you to think about the energy of money in your home. What did it feel like when money came up? Was it calm, open, and safe? Or was it tense, unpredictable, and avoided? Was money talked about openly, or was it something that only showed up when something was wrong? Did you feel like you could ask for things, or did you feel like asking felt like you were doing something wrong? Because for so many people, the first experience of money is not about math. It's about emotion. It's about tone. It's about the look on someone's face. It's about what happened right after the conversation ended. And the reason this matters so much is because your subconscious mind does not store information the way your logic brain does. It stores experiences, it stores patterns, it stores associations. So if money was constantly paired with tension, your brain learned that money equals tension. If money was paired with arguments, your brain learned that money equals conflict. If money was given and then taken away or used to reward or punish behavior or control your behavior, your brain learned that money equals control. And when those patterns are repeated over and over and over again during your formative years, they don't just stay as a memory. They become beliefs. They become expectations. They become your baseline from what money is. And here is where this gets really important. When money is used as control in childhood, it does not feel like control in the moment. It feels like survival. Because as a child, you are dependent. You are learning how to stay safe, how to stay loved, how to stay accepted. So if money or resources were tied to your behavior, your brain starts to make the connection, like, I need to be good to receive. I need to perform to be provided for. I need to earn love. I need to earn support. And those patterns don't just disappear when you become an adult. They evolve. They show up in the way you work. They show up in the way you earn, the way you spend, the way you relate to money. So now, instead of a parent controlling access to money, you may find yourself controlling yourself. You may overwork because you feel like you always have to prove your worth. You may undercharge because asking for more feels uncomfortable or unsafe. You may feel guilty receiving because somewhere along the lines, receiving became associated with obligation or expectation. Or you may go into the opposite direction where you resist structure. completely because structure feels like control and control does not feel safe. And this is where people get confused because on the surface, it can look like discipline issues. It can look like inconsistency. It can look like you just need better habits. But underneath it, what is actually happening is your nervous system is responding to money the same way it learned to respond to it in the past. And your nervous system does not care about your goals. It cares about your safety. So if money has been coded as something that is tied to pressure, expectations, or emotional risk, your body is going to react to it, even if your mind wants something different. Now, I want to talk about the other side of this, which is money as punishment, because this one is even more subtle and it runs deep. And I also want to gently bring up awareness to something that can show up not just in childhood, but in adult relationships. Because sometimes money doesn't just carry wounds from the past. Sometimes those patterns repeat in more subtle ways that don't always get labeled, ways that are easy to overlook, but your body feels them. Moments where money is used to prove a point, moments where support is pulled back to create distance. Moments where generosity turns into expectations, or where silence replaces communication and money becomes the message. And no one says outright that this is control, but you feel it. You feel the shift. You feel the energy. You feel the tension. You feel the unspoken messages underneath it all. And it can bring you right back into your younger version of yourself. The one who felt like something could be taken away. The one who felt like she had to adjust, overgive, or stay quiet to keep the peace. And again, this isn't about blaming anyone. It is about recognizing patterns because your subconscious doesn't separate past from present. It responds to what feels familiar. So if something in your current environment mirrors something from your past, even slightly, your nervous system reacts as if it's happening all over again. And this is where so many women disconnect their power without even realizing it. Because instead of feeling grounded and secure, they start adapting, they start shrinking, they start over-functioning. They start trying to manage the energy instead of honoring what they feel. And that has nothing to do with money itself. That has everything to do with what money has been associated with. If you grew up in an environment where money was taken away as a consequence, or where financial support was inconsistent, or where there was instability around resources, your brain might have learned that having something does not mean you get to keep it. It may have learned that good things don't last. It may have learned that everything is temporary. And this creates a very special pattern that I see all the time, which is the cycle of gaining and losing, where you finally start to make more money and instead of feeling secure, you feel anxious, where you receive something and instead of enjoying it, you wait for it to go away, where you start to build momentum and then something happens that brings you back down. And it can feel like bad luck or poor timing or just how life is. But what is often happening underneath is that your system is trying to stay in what it feels safe in and what feels familiar. Because if loss was familiar, then your system will recreate it. Not because you want to struggle, but because your brain is wired to return to what it recognizes. And this is where the concept of deserving becomes really important. Because if you were punished around money, or if money was associated with negative consequences, your subconscious may hold a belief that having more is not safe, that having more might lead to conflict, pressure, or loss. So even when opportunities come in, there can be this internal resistance that you cannot logically explain. You may procrastinate, you may delay, you may question yourself, you may downplay your value. And again, this is not because you are incapable. It is because your system is trying to protect your base and it's basing this off of past experiences. Now, I want to bring this into something even deeper, which is identity. Because money wounds are not just about money. They are about who you had to become in order to survive your environment. If money was inconsistent, you may have become hyper independent. If money was controlling, you may have become hyper aware of other people's needs. If money was scarce, you may have become someone who holds on tightly or someone who avoids it altogether. And those identities can feel so normal that you don't even question them. You just think, this is who I am. I am the one who always figures it out. I am the one who does not ask for help. I'm the one who makes things work. I'm the one who sacrifices. But those identities were formed in response to something. And for some of you listening, this didn't just shape how you see money. It shaped who you became in every area of your life. Because when money felt unstable or conditional or tied to someone else's mood or your behavior, you didn't just learn about money. You learned how to hold everything together. You became the one who figured it out. You became the one who doesn't ask for too much. You became the one who makes sure everything else is okay before you even check in with yourself. And somewhere along the way, people around you got used to that version of you. They got used to the you being the strong one. They got used to you handling the things. They got used to you carrying the emotional weight, the financial weight, the mental load. And not because they were bad people, but because you made it look like you had it handled. So now, even as you grow, even as you start to want more, even as you begin to shift, there can be this unspoken expectation that you will continue to be the version of you, the one who holds it all, the one who doesn't break, the one who doesn't need. And that can make receiving feel uncomfortable because receiving requires you to soften. Receiving requires you to not be the one doing everything. Receiving requires you to let something in. And if your identity has been built around being the one who holds everything together, that can feel unfamiliar. That can even feel unsafe. They were adaptive, they were protective, and at some point they may have been necessary, but they may not be serving you anymore. Because the version of you who had to survive is not the same version of you who is trying to expand. And this is where healing comes in. Healing is not about blaming your past. It's about understanding it. It's about recognizing that the way you relate to money makes sense based on your experience. And once you understand that, you can begin to change it. So the first step is awareness, but not just surface level awareness. I want you to get honest. I want you to look at your patterns without judgment. I want you to ask yourself, where do I feel tension around money? Where do I feel guilty? Where do I feel fear? Where do I feel lack? Where do I feel like I have to prove something? Where do I feel like I'm going to lose it? And instead of trying to fix it right away, I want you to get curious about it. Because curiosity opens the door to change in a way that judgment never will. The second step is separating your past from your present, because this is where your power is. You are not in the environment anymore. You are not that version of yourself anymore. And money is not the same thing it was back then. But your subconscious needs to be shown that. It needs to have repetition. It needs new experiences and it needs safety. And this is where practices like affirmation, visualization, and nervous system regulation can come in. Not as surface level tools, but as a way to retain your body to feel safe without something that once did not feel safe. So when you say, I'm safe with money, I'm worthy of money, money supports me, you are not just saying words. You are creating a new association. You are teaching your nervous system something different. And over time with consistency, that begins to shift. Now, I want to give you something practical, something that you can actually do after this episode. I want you to sit down and write out your money story. But I do not want you to write it from the perspective of who you are now. I want you to write it from the perspective of your younger self. What did she learn about money? What did she believe she had to do to receive? What did she believe would happen if she had more? What did she feel when money was talked about? And then I want you to look at the story and ask yourself, is this still true? Is this something I want to carry forward? Just because something was true then does not mean it has to be true now. And the final piece of this is to give yourself permission to have a different experience, to not create the same patterns, to not stay in the same identity, to not carry the same weight, because you're allowed to feel safe with money. You're allowed to receive without guilt. You're allowed to have more without fear. And you are allowed to build a relationship with money that feels supportive instead of stressful. So as we close this out, I want you to remember this. And if you've been listening to this and something in you feels seen and heard, maybe even just a little uncomfortable, I want you to sit with that for a second. Because this work is not about pointing fingers. It's about recognizing patterns that have been running quietly in the background. It's about those moments where you start to think, wait, I do that, or wait, I feel that way, or wait, that actually makes sense. Not in a way that creates blame, but in a way that creates awareness, because awareness is what gives you power back. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And that's where everything begins to change. And sometimes it's even more subtle than that. Sometimes money is framed as generosity. It's framed as support. It's framed as, I'm doing this for you. But underneath it, that can be the unspoken conditioning. It can be an expectation, a quiet understanding that everything feels good as long as everything stays good. As long as you're agreeable, as long as you're easy, as long as you don't challenge anything, as long as you don't express something that might disrupt this dynamic. And the moment something shifts, the moment you speak up, the moment you have a feeling, the moment you say something that isn't perfectly received, the energy will change. And the support that once felt consistent suddenly feels uncertain. And again, nothing may be said directly. There may not be a conversation that clearly defines it, but your body will notice. Your body feels the shift from safety to something that feels conditional. And what that does on a subconscious level is incredibly powerful. Because now money is no longer just money. Money becomes tied to your behavior, your tone, your emotion, to whether or not you are easy. And this creates a pattern where you may start to question yourself, where you may start to soften your truth, where you may start to hold things in, where you may start to wonder, did I lose? Did I say something wrong? Was I too much? Should I have said something differently? And without even recognizing it, you begin to self-regulate not based on what feels aligned, but based on what feels safe to maintain support. And that is not a money dynamic. That is a nervous system dynamic. Because now your nervous system is linking honesty with loss, expression with withdrawal. And that can follow you long after the situation ends. It can show up in future relationships. It can show up in your business. It can show up in how you ask for money, receive money, or even hold on to money. Because somewhere deep down, there's a part of you that learned, if I fully express myself, something might be taken away. And that's not because it's not true. It's because at some point it felt true. And your body doesn't forgive what felt unsafe. You're not broken. You are patterned, and patterns can change. This is not about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you are without the conditioning. And that is where everything shifts. If this resonated with you, I want you to share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been telling herself that she is bad with money, Because the truth is, she's not bad with money. She was just never taught how to feel safe with it. I am so full of love and gratitude that I get to share my story with you. This is her subconscious blueprint, where we don't just chase the dreams, we become them. And remember, you don't get what you want, you get who you are. So go out and be that version of her today. Much love and gratitude. I will see you next time.